Sunday Talks with the Marshmallow Man.
Hey, I'm Ossie from Three Monkeys Solderless, home of the world's best cables for your pedalboard. We got the 1/4-inch audio. We got the 2.1 millimeter DC, also solderless. We got cool cable colors, and we got a sale going on right now for the holidays. So check us out at threemonkeyssolderless.com. All right, so we're back on the quest, on the chase for the first album, Tone. And I thought today we would introduce another piece of gear, which could be a really good alternative for people to kind of put together the system that I'm working on. And that would be the Ox Stomp. So I just got one of these things to try out. And it's really good. So I think this is going to be something that will be incorporated into what I'm calling the solution. And I think it's a practical sort of alternative for the what is known as the Ox amp top attenuator, the big universal audio box that I use all the time for the greenback punch setting. Now the thing was to run it with the Marshmallow, right, which I'm really happy with the way the Marshmallow is sounding. So I'm pretty much fine with that. There's a line out from the back of the amp, which is part of the solution. And going into the Ox, you'd have to install the line in. And I have a little video on how you actually do that. But I think for some people, it's a little bit too much, a little too complicated. It's, maybe just a little too involved to sort of get into. So this is a great idea because it's not only is it considerably less expensive than its big brother, the amp top Ox, but it also doesn't have the attenuator on it. It just has a line in, and there's two of them, which is even cooler too. So now you got basically two channels of Ox. So you have an A channel and a B channel that you can select sort of, and I haven't gotten deep into this yet, but you can select different mics for each channel. You can select different rigs. I'm just going to use the same rig that I always use, which thank God is a preset on this. So I could just, hit the ground running, the greenback punch. But this will allow you to possibly have more permutations in a sense of where you're going to put the effects, which was where we left off last time, right? So we're going to start using this. And if you've got, if you're thinking about, going like the Marshmallow route, but, the Ox part of it is a little bit of intimidating, I think this solves that problem. And it creates an ideal environment for both recording and for if you want to playing through full range, full response, powered monitors. I think, I've been getting a lot of email inquiries about the amplifier and the setup. And I think people want to be able to just use the amplifier with a 412 Marshall cabinet, right, with a Celestion speaker in it, and get the same exact sounds that I'm getting, using the Ox. And that's, you could do that, but you're going to need to mic the cab, and you're going to need, to be able to do that properly, some good preamp equipment, things like that, to give that studio sound. So this kind of takes care of that already. I mean, the amplifier sounds great in front of 412s, and if you're the kind of guy that really likes to dig in and get things exact, then, the Ox is probably not going to be what you're going to do. But for me, this is the way to go. So let's get back into where we left off and I had a chance to sort of like listen to the playback from last week and figure out what I really liked. So let's start off from there and then figure out some things that may have come to light in the past week, thanks to some channel guys that have been communicating with me on a consistent basis with some interesting information. So anyway, let's go over the pedal board again real quick. So we have just the, a fairly rudimentary sort of like Eddie rig, so to speak. So once again, we have an entry box, which is like a utility sort of box. It has a buffer in it. It has two outputs, or two ways that the output can go after the buffer. One would be dry and one would be towards the rest of the rig. So this is sort of like the wet dry theory, that effects were put into a different signal chain than was the dry sound to retain signal integrity of that, sort of like amplifier and guitar relationship that often is degraded when you start running a lot of effects. So anyway, you would have basically guitar in, let me get over here, guitar in, dry out, and then you have a little loop for the bringing in the flanger and output going into our 6-band EQ. And then that enters our box number 1, which is the sort of like my idea or my theory or my conception of what, or belief of what pedal 1 was on his pedal board, which is just a loop box for a Univox Echo, which we're going to use for now, this Echo Rec, but we're going to change to that Boss pedal that somebody gave me a link to because that sounded really good. So this is coming out, and the Boss pedal even has an expression pedal jack for it, so you can modulate, turning the knob with your foot instead of with your hand, so you can leave the pedals on the floor and be able to control that sound. So anyway, it goes into the Echo Rec, back into the loop box, then into the Phase 90, and then we have 2 Echoplexes in series. That's the part that eventually I'm going to change, but for right now I wanted to stick with the board in this configuration and just listen again to what I liked about the signal chain thus far, and then talk about some of the things that may have come to light in recent days for me anyway. So the way I'm running this again is we have the dry out, which would be run into the bright channel or the lead channel, right? Like on an old Marshall. And then we're going to take the affected out and we're going to put it into the normal channel of the sort of like Plexi standard circuit. And that'll allow us to dial in on one side the wet affected sound as well as the dry into 1 amp. Now, I'm not sure exactly that's the way it was done, but we're going to continue on figuring this out. So we have our guitar again with just like a kind of like a PAF style pickup, 9K, not too hot. And let's bring it up and we can listen to just the dry for now with the Ox. So we have the Ox Stomp set up right now. They're both active. So we have a mono in and 2 outs. 1 out would be a greenback, which is it's using a ribbon mic on this side. And then on this one, we've got the dynamic mic, right? So it'd be like an SM57. All right. And just a tiny bit of room. So let's listen to see what this sounds like. And what have we got? Have we got our dry side up? I think we do. What are we doing here? Oh, we got to plug the pedal board in. That might help. Once again, apologies. Little less sleep than usual last night, so there we go. I might not be making any sense, or even less sense than usual today. All right, I'm going to adjust a little bit of the balances here. Okay, so I have them together right now. So both are set for greenback punch, one with the dynamic and one with the ribbon. So I think this does a really good job of the basically, doing what the Ox was doing in a much smaller package, and the added versatility of another input, which will allow us to do, like probably a wet dry with just one of these things, or maybe a JBL versus a greenback. I'm kind of like on the fence about that, but we'll still keep that open because I don't discount any possibilities whatsoever. So again, now with the effects, what I really liked about this, I didn't like where the echoes were in this. I don't necessarily like where the flanger is being split off to one side, or necessarily the phaser. So I'm thinking some of the phaser was right and some of it wasn't quite right. Like, let's listen to like the effect. So we turn on our phaser, right? Right? If we go back just to, like, to me, that's way too much phase. So, I mean, for most of what he was doing, I think that sounds pretty right. I'm thinking that the phase wasn't in the front of the entire system. I'm thinking the flanger might have been. I mean, it's powerful, but it's not really commanding. It's not really as nuts as it sounds like on I Ain't Talking About Love. See, there we go. No sleep. Okay, so that part I don't like, so I think that's got to move. But the one thing, again, that I loved was having this MXR EQ into the bassier channel to kind of it adds this mid-range while cutting out, but it's not an over-the-top mid-range, while cutting out some of the overly bassy response of the normal channel on an old Plexi. So the MXR EQ was always a puzzle to me, because anytime I would use it, I was like, yeah, I like the way it gains up the amp, but no matter what I do with it, it sounds like a cocked wah. It just never sounded correct to me. It sounded way too much like, the way Tom Schultz would use it or something along those lines. It was too vowely, too all kind of pronounced, too cocked wah sounding to me. But when it's blended with the bright channel in parallel, it seems to remove that sort of sound. But you still have this interesting mid-range. And now you're starting to get that kind of really, really nasty kind of, almost gating distortion. So it gives something extra to it. So I'm happy with splitting that off. I think that had to be something that was going on to my ear. Okay, so that's sort of where we left off at. So rewiring the pedal board is something that's going to have to be done, and we're going to try to put the flanger up in front of everything. But at the same time, let me put the guitar away here for a second. At the same time, there was some people that I conversed with regarding this stuff, and they seem to have as much of a passion as I do for this sort of things, and they come up with some interesting information, and they're always out kind of like searching around and seeking things. So one of the things that was sort of brought to my attention. Somebody a couple of Sundays ago, was referring to a Japanese book that contained the photographs of Ed's rig from that first tour on the Japanese leg, that had these photographs in much higher resolution. So another person that I've been conversing with a lot got a copy of the book, tracked one down and got it. And sure enough, these pictures are a lot better than these ones that we've seen that were kind of grainy black and white of the rig, of the pedal board, of the amplifiers. Not only were they in better resolution, they were in color. So there were some interesting things that came out. And that was that there was color-coded tape, right? I mean, on his pedal board and on his cables. And there were 3 colors. There was a red color, there was an orange color, and there was a yellow color. And it seemed, just from a cursory look of it and how it all sort of was being wired together, that red seemed to go with reds and oranges seemed to go with oranges and yellows seemed to go with yellows. So I was like, okay, so that would indicate probably 3 rigs. So you'd want to know 3 distinct signal paths. So you'd want to know on one end, which is this cable, which is that cable, and which rig does it correspond to when you're setting it up. So there were 3 color codes. The interesting thing as well is that there was one place where all 3 colors were on the cable, and that was the entrance to the flanger. So you had both the red, the orange, and the yellow tape on the plug that was going into the flanger. So does that indicate that the flanger was connected to all 3 signal paths, red, orange, and yellow? In my mind, yes, it has to. So now we have 3 distinct signal paths. Now, what they are is still a little bit of speculation. Well, all of this is speculation, but more speculation as to what these 3 signal paths were and what they were used for and what they were composed of. Now, we can identify that one signal path was definitely flanger, 6-band EQ, number 1 box, univox, phaser. That was definitely one signal path that we could identify. Other signal paths, we still have to go through the photographs a little bit more. What the other 2, what was in those paths, but they would definitely have the flanger in every single one of them. Or the cable itself that has the 3 color coding on it is related somehow to all 3 rigs. So maybe it's not always plugged into the flanger. Maybe sometimes it's plugged somewhere else. I don't know. We have to find out what the source, what's on the other end of the 3 color coded cable. Is it a line out from a Marshall head in the back? It's very possible. Is it the return from a wireless unit? Well, that's kind of interesting, possibly. Maybe, Eddie was on wireless and it was coming backstage to the Nady, and then it went back out via cable to the pedal board. I mean, it's a little goofy to do it that way, but it would allow him to sort of run around and not trip and disconnect his guitar, although I think there were live bootlegs where his guitar looked like it did get disconnected, or it sounded like his guitar got disconnected for a little while and that there was a plug problem. So anyway, going on, I also received some information from another individual that I've been communicating with, that in fact there were 3 rigs that he's aware of. And these 3 rigs would have been, and I'm going from memory right now, so I may have it a little bit wrong, right? And this is, plexidust, because he says I can say whatever is going on about what he's communicating with me. So plexidust communicated with me that the 3 rigs were a 50 watter, and these were all sort of like chains of slaved heads into amplifiers, into other amplifiers. So there was a 50 watter and then 200 watters. Now, he didn't go into exactly what chains were used for what, for which songs or which setups, but that would explain, that would line up with 3 colored cables, right? These are 2 different people telling me this from different sources. So we've got one that we have 3 color codes, and then we have another source that's indicating there were 3 rigs. And then we have, just from listening to the albums, 3 distinct levels of gain that we were talking about a while ago, that there wasn't just one level of gain. And how were these always, how were these levels created? Some have suggested that it was just, rolling the volume control. Very well could be, a lot of people do that. Not everybody runs everything up on 10 all the time. Sometimes it sounds a little better when you're running it on 7 or 6. a lot of big guys, they never have their guitar volumes all the way up. It's always just cracked down just a little bit, and that gives them the best sound they feel. So that's a possibility for the three situations, as well as, you know, 3 different rigs. It could also be a wet, dry. It could be any possible permutation. So we're getting even more information, but we're even more confused than before about what was going on. But I think there's going to be more information related to the 3 amplifiers and their histories coming in due time from Plexi. He's even apparently searching out, going back to, you know, Bletchley. I think if I'm reading him right, I think he's gone back to Bletchley to trace where these amplifiers came from, right? Who ordered them? Where did they go? Were they ordered for Ed? Did Ed's dad buy him amplifiers? It seems like that might have been the case. So a lot of interesting information there. Also, Plexi was recounting something that he had gotten from one of Ed's early techs regarding the number 1 Plexi, which is the vinyl covered one, not the Woody and not the 50, but the 100 watt with the missing logo and the tear in the front, as well as the knob in the back. Now, Plexi was talking about how that amplifier, obviously, you know, from recounts of the interior of the amplifier, as well as the pictures that have been published that are supposedly of that amplifier, that it had been rebuilt over the years, which I don't doubt at all, right? I mean, these amplifiers probably were rode very hard and put away very wet and abused, especially that number 1 that's known as the Rose Palace amp that he got from that particular venue or storage facility, whatever way you want to refer it to. That amplifier had, you know, blown up a lot. So we know that it has a different choke in it than it came stock with, for sure, right? Because the original choke from that era would have been a C-frame, and now it's in a sealed 4-bolt, right? Like a 70s choke. The output transformer, who knows? The power transformer, who knows? But if you're replacing the choke as well as tube sockets, which apparently his amplifier had ceramic sockets in it now, or at one point, would indicate that something catastrophic happened. If it was to the point that you had to replace all the sockets and the choke, my guess is the power transformer probably, you know, may have been damaged at the same time, so that would have been replaced. Now, the tech had also mentioned that maybe that knob was there to lower heater voltage to the amplifier to keep it from blowing up. And I thought, well, you know, that sounds it doesn't sound plausible to me for a few reasons. But what does sound plausible to me is that it could have been a hum balance pot. I think that's what it was. That's making the most sense to me of anything I've heard yet. And I didn't think of it ever before, but that would be the perfect position to put in something. So for instance, if you replace an amp, well, there's a couple of things here, right? So if you replace a power transformer, and let's say it's not a stock Marshall transformer, and it doesn't have a center tapped filament supply, which is there to balance out the 2 legs of the filament heater supply, voltage supply to ground, and give them consistent references or equal references to ground, you would need to use resistors to provide that reference to ground to prevent the amplifier from humming like crazy. So usually you use something like 200 ohm resistors or something like that right off of each leg and to ground. So that'll give you a very balanced sort of a balanced relationship between the 2 legs. Now, if you're back in the 70s, you know, a lot of people didn't do tube matching. In fact, I can't think of many people that ever thought of that back then. So a lot of, you know, when you replace tubes in an amplifier, you bought tubes and whatever they were, they were. Now, if you have tubes that are on opposite sides of the push-pull, right, on opposite sides of the output transformer that are way out of spec with one another, you can often run into hum problems. Now, a lot of amplifier companies just, as a matter of just the stock setup, included a hum balance pot on their tube amplifiers to sort of combat the problem of people tubing the amplifiers with, less than optimally balanced tubes or from the factory. And what the hum balance pot did was it replaced the center tap or the 200 ohm resistors with a potentiometer. And you would set up on a pot, you have, the two outside lugs, which corresponds to the conductive element inside the potentiometer, right? And then you have the center lug, which is the wiper, which kind of scrapes along the conductive element to give the division of resistance between the two lugs, right? So this more over here, you have more resistance on this side, more over here, you have more resistance on the other side. So you would use something along the lines of, I don't know, like a 200, 100 ohm pot, whatever. And you would connect the two outside lugs to the heater supply and the center lug or the wiper to ground. And then you would turn that and you would be able to basically quiet the amp down in terms of its hum relationship or its hum issues. Where would you want to put that? Well, on a Marshall like this, when you get around the beginning where the power tubes are, that back of that part of the chassis is very congested. It's very crowded in there. The back of the amp doesn't have a lot of room to put pots in there, and there's a lot of wire running everywhere. It's really congested, and it's not some place you would really want to mess around with. The best place to put it would be all the way on the end of the chain, just at the ends, just past the preamp tubes, which is where we see that pot, right? It would be just below that sort of unused socket hole that they used on the trims, right? It would be just below that, and it would be connected to that last power tubes heater supply. And that would be exactly, if someone's telling me they want a hum balance pot put in their Marshall, and I never met Eddie or never saw his amplifier and never, looked at the back of his amp, but that's where I would have put it. No question. That's exactly where I would have put it. So maybe that's what it was, a hum balance pot. So maybe it's solved, maybe it isn't. I really don't know, just offering up another suggestion. So that's the information that I've been receiving, and I think it's going to go somewhere. I think there's some really interesting stuff with the color coding cables, and I think when we find out more, when we put these two information sources together and collate them, these two streams of information, and collate them, I think something's going to come out of that. So hopeful there. So again, we continue on with more questions than answers. All right, so let's go into the YouTubes and let's look at some of the comments from the last week that we have and see what we got to say about everything here, right? So, all right, let me turn off the marshmallow over here. All right, so all right, so I'm trying to find the beginning. Actually, it's further out. Actually, there's a lot of stuff here to go. All right, so let's start right here. Oh my God, this may take an hour just to go through all this stuff. So we've got Chuck Hansen 7506. All right, let me move a little bit of the microphone so I could get closer to the screen because my vision isn't so great on this. All right, so Ed used the main amp for dry and tapped the signal to feed another amp with added effects. The entire amp became a preamp for the effects amp. Not only that, but he used the Les Paul quite a bit to fatten up guitar parts. He could have mixed in effects that way as well. Even though he had studio tricks for recording, he always sounded great live, especially in the early days. Yeah, so there's, I think I agree with most of that there, that there was, a big, a main head that was used to feed other signal chains. most of which would have effects on them. Tenor Jordan, where are you getting any of this information? I'm not sure who he's replying. I guess he's replying to Chuck Hansen. So it's Chuck Hansen. From being there from the beginning, my friend. You saw a 78 live set of close-up and we're in the studio, seeing track balls and fat and guitar parts. This may be just sort of like a intramural sort of battle going on here that I'll stay out of. Ted Dunn was very instrumental to get the Ed sound on those records. Yeah, I wasn't in the studio. That information came straight from Ed himself. Okay. In regards to the 78 tour, we all know he was doing wet dry stereo starting in 84. Yeah, I mean, I guess that just means that we know that was done. Yeah. Don more than Ted. I don't think Ted had much into tones, more songwriting, song structure, and lyrics, which was just as important. The only reason I point to Don more is because 1984 was amazing, and Ted had very little to do with the sound of it as well as the recording in general. Well, just in general, I mean, engineers are the ones that, you end up with the sound. I mean, a producer is different. It's sort of like, on a motion picture, a producer, well, that may not be the best analogy because often producers are nothing more than check writers. So let's leave that alone. All right. Chuck Hansen, 6 days ago. Good point. Yeah, I mean, I think in general, though, producers are there for arrangement, for, getting the flow going, making sure everything gets done, organization, as well as suggesting how you would organize parts. In a sense, some rewriting or editing, all of that. But definitely the engineer is the one that's going to be creating the sounds. That's for sure. Paul's then replying, all the photographic evidence, though, shows everything in front of the amp and daisy chaining, whether Club Days or 78 tour. In my experience setting up Van Halen style rigs, I like sound of modulation delay in front. The later wet dry rigs more result of the 84 tour being larger and Ed playing more locations around the stage, needing consistent cab sounds the power amps could provide. I mean, maybe. I don't know whether the photographic evidence is anywhere near complete or detailed enough to suggest how any of that stuff is set up, nor is any of it detailing how these amplifiers were actually wired in terms of their inputs and outputs. And I've said this a million times before, but I've worked for a lot of bands and I've seen some really weird stuff, right? And it could be mostly for convenience or what have you, but I could tell you for a fact, a lot of big name players, these 4 inputs ain't going where you think they are. That is for a fact. And these are on number 1 amps. They're not on just some dog that, they just drag around and beat on. No, these are number 1 amps that were wired that way. So I can't get down on saying because these amplifiers are strung in a way that you don't even know where the source of the cables are, or what the interior modifications are. I can't say for certain what's happening there, but you could be right. You're in one of those permutations for sure. Polscape again, despite what Ossie says, you can quickly find YouTube demos of the pedals in question and differences from the 70s versions and modern, and the differences is not subtle to good ears. Well, okay. I think you could get 70s versions and put them all together, and if they sounded alike, I'd be shocked. But, that's my opinion. Jamie. Hey, Jamie. Fun hanging out at 3402-ish. Sounds like kind of what Ace Frehley used to do at the end of his solos. The 70s coincidence? I think not. Yeah, I mean, everybody's sort of, hipping off at each other, right? What is he doing? What are they doing? And also, too, you do have, coincidental thought patterns, right? If you give, 100 people, 100 children, the same 10 or 20 pieces of Lego and allow them to go at it, my guess is you're going to find some similarities in how they're put together, because we're just, we're wired very similarly as humans, and we think the same ways, and we come up with a lot of parallel construction. I'll call that parallel construction, right? We do the same things alongside somebody without actual influence. All right. And Chuck Hansen again. As for the phaser, Eddie liked a certain brand of 9-volt battery, and he liked them used, not new. He claims it made it softer. Not sure if that actually makes a difference, but to Ed's ears it did. Well, it's definitely going to make a difference. I mean, anytime you're running ICs on lower voltage, you change their operating characteristics. So absolutely it makes a difference. Now we're in the analog world, right? So integrated circuits of the analog type. I'll preface that. Because once you start getting into logic and digital, when you start messing with the with voltages and also, more importantly, current, you'll get them operating in less than desirable characteristics, and they may not even work at all. So analog is forgiving, digital is not. All right, PVT grips. Enjoying the tone chasing Ossie. You could also try to balance the volume levels of the wet-dry rigs from the 2 amps aux boxes in Bandcamp, much like Don Landy would have moved the console faders to get the right blend of wet-dry signals and suited so on. Sure. Yep. I mean, most of what I do is pretty much, fast and, just setting it up and see where it goes. It's not refined. I'm not spending a lot of time, in the setup. I don't think it's at that point yet where that's going to make a huge difference. And what I'm doing, I'm more along the lines of testing out bigger theory points at this point. Other people, I think, have been doing what I'm doing with the equipment I'm doing and trying to dial in the exact balances and, that kind of thing a little more to better effect than I'm doing. But I'm just trying to figure out what the broad principles are, so to speak. BMF 5150, great test. The other hip is mine. All right, so you did own up to it. All right, Stan, enjoy it. I know you're loving it, so enjoy it more, man. I'm glad to see it got to you. Looking 33. What a strange AI thumbnail. So that's Relacima and somebody playing guitar. So, okay, I guess it is strange. I like it. And like I said, all of what I do is to amuse myself. And if someone else enjoys that, that's fine. But I don't do focus groups. I don't take advice. I'm unteachable. I don't know. I'm useless. So anyway, yeah, I liked the picture, so I went with it. Hey Jared, great stuff. I just finished putting together a nice pedalboard solely for my Van Halen. No effects loop, everything going into the front of my amp. It sounded pretty gnarly. I'll check out your other videos. Just going to mention that should get those decimator 2s or put a little bit of foam underneath those springs, get rid of that ping. Which springs are you referring to? I'm confused here. See, this is why I'm unteachable. I'll check out your other videos. Just going to mention you should get one of those decimator 2s or put a little bit of foam underneath those springs, get rid of that ping. Oh, what, on the guitar? I'm not sure. Okay. Let me know what you were talking about there. I have no idea. Hey, Jared. Looks like we got a bunch from him. Looks like Jared's gone to town on the channel. All right, let's check it out. Yeah, we all know Ed always liked to pull people's legs or pull people's leg. Not like not being able to afford a distortion pedal or turning up the variac or not knowing any theory or how to read music. If someone can memorize the 6 open strings, then he could certainly memorize 5 lines on a staff. A lot of us probably had friends like that, always messing with folks and having that drive to be the best and leave everyone else in the dust. Yeah, I mean, we're weird creatures as people. Our motivations are, our own. So, yeah, he liked pulling people's legs. He liked telling tall tales, but who doesn't? Hey, Jared, does sound a little strange there, but I believe we know now the phaser comes on after the open A chord right before the G, and I thought I heard the phaser effect was added in post with the delay, but I thought that couldn't be because of these raw tracks still have the phaser, unless the raw track was rendered with the phaser in post, so that's not actually just a raw track. Well, we don't know what these tracks are anyway, right? That's another thing. We do a lot of assumptions in the world. All right, one of the most valuable things I've ever learned in my lifetime is to recognize the value of information, what original sourcing is, and what you can actually determine, right? What you can actually know. And in the end, you realize you really can't know anything. But, you got to take it with a grain of salt and live in reality. So we just don't know what these tracks are. We get things and then we assume, oh, this is the raw track. And maybe not. And we don't know what kind of polish is on those even. All right, so there's a little weird swoosh artifact that Gnarly seems to hear when he hits that OBD chord, slides up to the 17th position. To do that gnarly run, there's a strange swoosh as he finished that slide up to the neck. You could totally hear it at 50 or 25% speed. Just always wondered what that was. I'll have to listen to that again. I'm not sure what you're referring to, but I'm sure it's there. Funny though, I started hitting the phaser going to the OBG chord, but I left it on for the duration. I've heard so many times, but I have to listen again. I don't hear where the phaser gets turned off. I'll give a listen to it right now. Yeah, these are all the things that are weird about his, about his rig in that album, that it seems there are times where it varies in strength somewhat. So, it's got to make sense eventually. That point may never come to us, but there is an explanation for this. We may never know, but there has to be an explanation. Jared again. Hey, Jared. Great stuff. I wouldn't think Eddie would be using old picks to get that really unique sound at the beginning of Ain't Talking About Love. It just sounds like a very aggressive attack with just the right palm mutes. The way you're playing here sounded great. Read more. I noticed a lot of people play it with mostly downstrokes. Maybe you get that attack, or maybe just a technique that Eddie might have also used. I'm used to alternating picking, so I'm able to get a good attack on a downstroke and upstroke. Could probably hear it if it's slowed down, listen a little closer. Once again, always something new. But yeah, that intro does sound so unique. Even tried it with a bit of phaser tweaking the Echoplex slackback, but just adds too many variables. That is getting such a clean, crisp tone, like you were getting pretty much straight into the marshmallows. Yeah, I mean, that's why I think it's wet and dry. Because you have that attack that is not being degraded by a signal chain to me. So I probably should have just bought my own Marshall head by now, instead trying to get that same tone out of a 212 can with vintage 30s, Seymour Duncan 170 with power stage and several pedals. Haha, but I'm starting to back off everything and the gain a little more every few years. Yeah, it's not really gain though. That's the thing. It's not gain. It's just clipping. It's distortion with less gain is what I hear in his amplifier. It's not a Soldano. It's a Marshall that's malfunctioning. So that's just what I think for that main sound. If you go to something that's more modern sounding, it never sounds right to my ears. So, keep going down the road, Jared. Sounds like you got it going on. So keep it going. Yeah, there's a few more from Jared. So I wonder if the person who mentioned daisy chaining was necessarily meaning a straight signal path. Unless that's what the term usually means. I'm assuming daisy chaining could also mean zigzag across the board like I do. Having them in a very specific signal chain, much different than how they appear in their layout. Keep an eye in the back now and the intermittent pedals up front accessible to the tuner. Daisy chaining to me just means going from one input to the next input. That's the way it's always been used in my experience. That's not to say someone else hasn't called it something else, but that's my experience and of what it is. All right. What are some of y'all's thoughts on what speakers Ed would using in the recording of the first album or two? I have a 212 cab and I want to put a nice pair of 12s together and mix it up a little bit. Well, we don't know. It's just thoughts or speculation because we don't know what the cabinet was that was in there. We don't see the picture of the speakers. We see the top of the cabinet, and someone might say, well, I recognize that, but that doesn't mean it had the same speakers. Now, as far as I know, he had really, I think, two types of speakers, and they would be blackbacks, which are greenbacks from the 70s, and JBLs. So pick one of those, I guess. Slipstream. I like your videos, Ozzy. Thanks. And I'm learning about your Three Monkey solderless company at the same time. Before I saw your videos, I didn't even know that solderless was an option on a pedal board. Then again, I had to buy all-in-one multi-effects units for guitar. Around the 12-minute mark, I think you and the audience are realizing the MXR phaser effects needs to be louder on your pedal board for the palm mute scratches at the beginning of Atomic Punk, and also during some of the other songs that Ed plays with it. Your original White Rice said it was diluting the phaser too much. It's cool that we're learning together. Thanks for doing this. Yeah, I mean, I'm on the fence about the phaser because it sounds right in certain applications and it doesn't sound right in other ones. If it's up front, to me, it doesn't sound right. For certain applications, like most of the places, let's say in Jamie's Crying, where he's using it in the little sort of, that little part, I don't know what he's playing, where he's like, all right? When you have a phaser in front of the amp for that, it sounds just too goofy. Sounds right like when it's here, but then the beginning, of the palm mute scratching stuff, it could be stronger. So like I said, that's all going to make sense at some point. Just that point may never come. All right. Thanks for that Slipstream. Dustin Scott 5628. How integral is the Variac? Well, this is from a different video, slaving two vintage Marshalls together. So how integral is the Variac in getting that sound? I'm guessing that it just browns out a little. Sounds good. I think that slaving is what it was doing. I've seen people achieve some results with just a Variac, but I feel like slaving is the correct way. But as you said, all of the control you can get over the final volume output, etc. Either with daisy chaining or more amps, or just with the volume turned down so you're not peeling people's faces off at a small club. Yeah, I definitely think the purpose of his rig was to be able to have a continuously variable stage volume, which would have been necessary, especially for a sophisticated band. You're just not going to find musicians creating a great sound where the stage volume is unmanageable. I don't believe it. I just don't. It just doesn't happen. You could maybe be too quiet and mic'd. That's way better than too loud. But I don't know of any professional band, any serious band that gets a great sound that has an uncontrolled stage volume. It just doesn't happen. It does not happen. It's too chaotic. There's too much bleed through all the other instruments. It's impossible to make a good mix. The band will just sound terrible. And if you want to do that for a living like these guys did, and we're serious about getting a record contract and drawing in, the most amount of fans and getting a great, show together, you couldn't do that. So yeah, I think the whole purpose of his rig was based around getting a manageable, continuously variable stage volume. Now, how does the Variac fit into that? Now, my theory, again, these are all just what ifs, so everybody can have their own ideas about this stuff, and it's the way that it should be. But the Variac to me was a necessity of, let's say, keeping the amplifier alive. I think that was what was going on. I don't think it was a tone choice. Like he's like, oh, if you turn this down, all of a sudden the amplifier gets really distorted, because it doesn't. There's many more things that has to happen in conjunction with the Variac that does that. But mostly the Variac keeps the amplifier from blowing up when it's run in a less than optimum way, right? When it's being loaded down incorrectly, when it's being played, on gag in that situation, it would blow up a lot. These amplifiers would definitely blow up. So if you turn down the voltage to the amplifier, it's going to limit its power and it's going to create a more reliable system. So that's my theory about what the Variac was. Now, it's not there for sound, it's first there for reliability. All right, so Rick Shredder, hadn't seen this. Wow, it sounds phenomenal. Vic Johnson, Jose Amp demo. Yeah, thanks for that. You know what? Vic sent me a while back after, he got the amp, sent a video of him playing the thing at in the rehearsal space where, they were rehearsing with Mike Anthony and with, the rest of the band, with Sammy, and with Jason Bonham. And it sounded so good. I got to put that up. I don't think he would be mad if I did that. So I got to put that up, because he obviously makes it sound a lot better than I do. All right, Toto 6196, or no, TOTC, excuse me. 6196, great plug-in, but I can't get that splash thing with Running with the Devil. It's like a pre-delay before the tank. Any suggestions would be helpful. Sunset Sound plugin. Yeah, the reverb plugin is really cool. I'm not sure about the splash thing. What you mean by a splash thing? Maybe I was talking about a splash thing. I don't know. But I'm not sure. Just keep playing around. I think there was obviously some pre-delay, and I would use the room sound. So I would build, right now, I would build the reverb sound like this. It's just my theory. I would use it on a separate parallel track, and I would use 2 levels of the Sunset Sound plugin. The first of which would be a room sound. All right, just the room, isolated, no dry, so to speak, heavy on the room sound with some pre-delay. And then the stack on top of that the chamber from room 2. And I think you'll get a pretty cool reverb sound. Maybe it's what you're looking for. Maybe not. I hope it is. All right, so then we got another one from TOTC. Did you ever figure out the sunset settings for Running the Devil? It's the strangest thing. It almost has a pre-delay before the chamber, the bouncy splash thing. Yeah, so again, try that, see how that works. The Jose, all right, so those went fast. Yeah, so yeah, I got to take it down now, actually. I build, all right, so I like to build amplifiers, right? Because it's fun for me to do. So I like to build them one at a time and play with them until I get them sounding good, and then sell them. And I usually sell them on Reverb. And I think it's always good to give like the sound that the actual amp is making, as opposed to like, this is a Jose amp. If you want one, I'll build you one. This is what it sounds like. It's always like, this is the one, because they all turn out like in their own little way, a little bit different. And you're trying to get them as close as possible, and you're spending a lot of time on each one. So you want to make sure that they know exactly what they're getting. So I put up a video for one Jose amplifier that I had finished. What was it? On Wednesday or Thursday of last week, I'd finally gotten it where I liked it. And then did a quick startup video, because the input controls and the volumes and the jump switches and the push pulls and all that stuff can be a little confusing, difficult to write a manual about it. So I figured I'll just make a video to explain how to use it at the same time, and then put the whole thing up. So I put it up, and then it sold in like an hour. So I got to take that down. Or maybe I'll just leave it up. I don't know. So anyway, yeah, so Jamie Gusky said that went fast. Yeah, it did. Monaco, hey, buddy. Monaco's another individual that I built a Jose for, that got one of my Jose builds last month. Whoever purchased that amp will enjoy it as much as I do mine. That's great to hear. The amp is absolutely a joy to play. Ozzy, truly our gem. I can't get a bad tone out of it. I really enjoy watching your videos as well. Please keep the great work you do. Well, thanks, Monaco. Those are some really kind words, and it's a lot of the reason why I keep doing this. Is it's great to get people's stuff and have them enjoy it, and it gives you a little bit of satisfaction that there's things out there that you made that somebody likes. So anything I can do, if it's appreciated, it's very cool. So thanks for that. Now we have the last post. Geeseberry, thanks for not starting the video with that horrible screeching noise. Yeah, like I said, I do everything for my own amusement. So you're going to be hearing more of the screechy noise as time goes on, and there may even be even more annoying things. to come. So stay tuned and be more annoyed in the near future. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.